Hey gamers, Lexu here with another build guide video, this time on my mana stacking Frostfire Gemma character. This build has top tier clearing speed and can also instantly kill elites and sometimes even the map bosses. I wanted to make my first spellcaster focused on hard casting without any dots or triggers, so I decided to use Gemma for the fire and cold damage along with Frigid transmission and Icy ring as our primary sources of damage. Let's go over what the standard Gemma character has for hero traits. You can see we get fusion energy with 4 bars by default, but then we get another 4 here, so we get a total of 8 maximum stacks of fusion energy, each fusion energy stack giving us 16% cold and fire damage. Normally we would only care about the cold damage, but the fire damage also gets added to our cold damage with Frostfire strength here. So this is really 32% per stack times 8. When Frostfire Rampage is used, we get an extra 100%, so that's another times 2 right there, along with another 64 fusion energy effect here, so that's really another 2.64 times multiplier on the damage. The spread hero talent here also increases that duration, as well as giving us very useful skill radius for this build. Seeping in is the final hero talent here, giving us even more damage with cold penetration. So you can see that Frostfire Gemma here has just an abundance of damage on damage here. Do keep in mind, although this is a lot of cold and fire damage, that it's all additive with each other. So the more cold, fire, and spell damage that you stack, the less effective it becomes. Meaning we'll have to find other ways to scale our damage further. For the skill setup, we actually have 2 damage dealing spells with Frigid transmission and Icy ring. The main skill is going to be the one that you put up top here, which does matter for this build. The important thing to note with Frigid transmission is that it doesn't have a cast time, so you can use it at the same time you're using Icy ring. Frigid transmission also refreshes its cooldown when it causes freeze, so if you're causing enough freeze, you can actually spam this skill as fast as you can click it while you're also casting Icy ring simultaneously. For a curse, I have Biting Cold for cold penetration. This is linked to Terrain of Malice to making an aura without a cast time. You also need extended duration and cooldown reduction for permanent uptime. Mana Boil also increases our damage. Note that this is extra spell damage, which means it's a separate multiplier instead of stacking with our already high cold and fire damage. Spiral Strike is the mobility skill that lets you zoom around the map, and is also the reason why we're using ceremonial daggers for weapons. Quick mobility is used to make it faster. Periodic burst gives us both attack and cast speed. We're using this skill to initiate with hardened. Hitting enemies with this skill will give us a hardened buff that decreases the amount of damage we take by 25%. For passives, I have a cast when taking damage setup with force start and reform for more survivability. Because this is an energy shield build, we're reserving all of our life. Elemental amplification can be linked to seal conversion to reserve the life, as well as magical source. You can see here that I have 97% of my sealed life here, but we have more than enough energy shield to make this build tanky. We also have a limitless amount of mana regain and regeneration, so we can reserve almost all of our mana here. We got 2 spirits here with Thunder Spirit and Flame Spirit, as well as Frigid Domain for more damage. Again, this is additional cold damage, so it works as a separate multiplier. Just be careful leveling magical source because it does seal more mana the higher the level is. I recommend keeping this at level 16 so it doesn't seal over 100% of your sealed life. Obviously for the talent trees we're going Goddess of Knowledge because this is where we start to stack our int, mana, and energy shield. The first major nodes are going to be Beacon for extra spell damage, and then Insight to gain more spell damage from our stacking int. You can see here that I decided to get energy shield instead of spell or cold damage, and this is because they all stack together and we already have so much fire and cold damage from our Frostfire Gemma hero traits. So adding on top of that isn't going to be as effective. Of course this build is stacking mana, so I got the maximum mana here, and then we're also scaling our damage through crit chance and crit damage. We're getting the int because the int gives us more mana and energy shield. And then you'll need to get the sealed mana cost reduction here to use all the passive skills in our setup. Once you have 20 points in this tree, you can move on and come back to this focus blessing stack later. Our second tree is Arcanist. where we get full load. This is how we're able to reserve almost all of our mana because our skills only cost 15% of our current mana. We're also getting enough mana back on casts to always have this 35% additional damage active. The second major node here is defining for the build and the reason why we're doing mana stacking. We'll eventually have 7 maximum focus blessings in our talent trees alone, meaning we'll get 14% of our maximum mana converted to cold damage. Once again, I start this tree off ignoring the cold damage and going for the maximum mana instead. The attack and cast speed combo is very good because the cast speed lets us use Icy Ring faster for more DPS, and attack speed helps us use Spiral Strike faster for more mobility. More mana to be had here. Cast speed here. This also restores mana when using skills. Skill area is not a priority yet, it's more of a quality of life, so you can come back to this later, skip it for now. Maximum mana here. Energy shield here. And we're also getting more energy shield from stacking mana for even more synergy. Focus here. And this will be our way of gaining focus blessings right here, unless you want to go back and take preparation here, but you're going to lose out on some damage from insight. More int, and mana from int. Mana regen. Restore missing mana when using skills. And then the final point here. Our final tree is Magister. We could pick a tree outside of this column, but it's better for us to stay in this column because we are focused on getting the int. Bunch will give us another focus blessing as well as stacking additional spell damage. And Play Safe will give us 40% main skill spell damage here. I mentioned earlier that it does matter what you choose to be your main skill between Frigid Transmission and Icy Ring. And since we're spamming more Frigid Transmissions, we want that to be our main skill for the damage here. Once again, ignoring the spell damage here and going for max mana. Energy Shield Regain is going to be very important for sustain. Some skill area here. More mana here. And sealed mana reduction. Cast speed. Spell damage here isn't going to give us much more damage, but we get 4% chance for double damage here, as well as paralyzed for enemies to take an extra 10% more damage. Focus blessing duration here, and spell critical strike damage here, we have at least 7 maximum focus blessings for 35% crit strike damage here. More int to stack here, and then energy shield for more survivability here. Don't forget once you're done with this tree here to go back and get the extra focus blessing in the first tree here, and then you can start working on skill area here as well as right here. This build does not require any legendary items. All this gear I've crafted myself with some pretty easy to obtain crafting materials. I was able to get energy shield higher than 6k, mana higher than 9k, and intelligence almost at 1k. I have my elemental resistances capped, and my corrosion I'm still working on capping, but even with lacking erosion resistance, I never die while mapping because I have more than enough energy shield and energy shield regain. The priority for all crafted gear is pretty much always going to be maximum mana and intelligence. The Sacrificial Blade will be your most important crafted item. Remember that we're using Sacrificial Blade so we can use Spiral Strike for mobility. Elemental damage double dips here. Fire damage also affects cold damage due to the Frostfire Gemma hero trait. Crit chance and crit damage are also good methods to scale our DPS. I put gear attack speed on my main hand weapon so that we can Spiral Strike faster. You don't need to craft 2 daggers right away if you're on a budget. The Glacier Caster Shield is a very cheap legendary item that you can buy off the market for only 1 Elementium. This shield actually adds more damage than my second dagger here at a fraction of the price. Again, for the rest of the gear, we're trying to cap out resistances while getting maximum mana, energy shield, and int. It's not too difficult to craft an amulet with +1 cold skill level. Make sure you prioritize energy shield on your chest armor as we get 20% more of it due to our talent tree. Later on when you have the currency, it's a good idea to buy 2 of these rings here, which will cost you around 20 to 30 flame elementium a piece here. You can also get these int gloves here, Touch of the Dark Surge. These can give you an additional focus blessing stack. And if you corrupt these, you have a chance of actually getting 2 more maximum focus blessing stacks here. It's going to be super pricey to buy a 2 maximum focus blessing glove here. Or you can try to gamble yourself, but expect to sink a lot of money into this. Again, no legendaries are required here, the build still works very well with just crafted gears. Now for the training dummy test, remember that this is not a good indication of our DPS, because it never freezes. But you can see here that you can get around maybe 3 or 4 mil. Yeah, 4 mil sustained here for me right now on the training dummy. Again, I'm not able to spam Frigid transmission here because the training dummy never freezes. The training dummy can give you an idea of what the DPS would look like against a single target boss. But our damage multiplies with density where you'll see some crazy burst damage. Furthermore, we can kind of cheese the map bosses with the current seasonal theme that we have where we can summon ads. I'll show you how this works later because you can instantly kill map bosses with it, making this build extremely fast at clearing maps. Now let's go over how to play the build. I mentioned the main skill being Frigid Transmission earlier in the guide. Alternatively, you can make Icy Ring your main skill instead. Our main skill gets 40% more damage from our talent tree. Use Icy Ring as your main skill if you want bigger chain reaction explosions. Or use Frigid Transmission as your main skill if you want higher burst damage while in density. The first thing you need to do is cast your Mana Boil. Once you activate it, it should stay up the entire run if you have your setup correct and never run out of mana. You can see that I have almost all my mana reserved, but I will never run out of mana with a proper talent tree setup. Spiral Strike is going to be used to move around the map quickly. The more gear attack speed you have, the faster you can do this. Make sure you initiate by hitting enemies with Spiral Strike first, so you can get the hardened debuff for more survivability. Once you're inside a group of enemies, you can hold down Icy Ring while rapidly spamming Frigid Transmission. If you have enough density, Frigid Transmission will continue to reset, so spam it as fast as you can. Also make sure you're casting your Biting Cold curse for the cold penetration. So let's just get into it. Here's the aura. Here's the Icy Ring, and here's the Frigid Transmission. There's already an Elementium. And then we just go from pack to pack using our Spiral Strike, stopping to cast our Icy Ring, and spamming Frigid Transmission. And once you get the hang of this, this will be very, very quick. So the build is very spam heavy. And it does take some fast reactions in order to move quickly through a map. But when you see me blinking around constantly, that's the Frigid Transmission being reset and casted again. Against the boss, we can activate our seasonal theme here to give us ads. Once the ads are here, then the boss is easy to kill. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube if you want to see more Torchlight content. Appreciate you watching, peace out, and happy slaying.